My name is Ifeemi Andrew. Let's get into conversation. I'd like to take our minds back to what happened in the city of Port Harcourt some few days ago when it rained non-stop for most of the day. That was just about 2 days ago. And we had flash floods right here in the city of Port Harcourt. Parts of Obiakbo and Falga were flooded. And it brought up the question of, well, the August break is almost done with, and we are going to face the rainy season proper again. And NIMET had issued warnings about impending flood. Now, remember that we've had the various local government chairmen set up flood committees, all aimed at trying to prepare for what's coming. Now, this would not be the first time we've had something of this nature. The worst of all would be what happened in 2012. Many still remember. But then you also remember just the flood that happened last year and how it affected major. In fact, the East-West Road was basically divided in some parts, and it was quite difficult accessing Delta State using the East-West Road. Some people would have to turn and go through Onitsha. And even at that, I moved around that period. I went through Onitsha, I went to Asaba, I was in Delta, and it wasn't funny what we saw. Places submerged. It got people asking questions like, how prepared is government? What are we putting in place? I must say, at the time, I almost felt like we didn't have any government, because I was expecting a lot of work to begin immediately after the water receded, but then that wasn't the case. The East-West Road and those areas that were affected by the flood then are still the way they are. Even if we had work, we thought work was going to be completed for those particular parts that were destroyed, and the last time I used that road, it was sad. Anyways, how prepared is the government? What are the plans on ground? What should we be doing? Perhaps anyone who's in the government listening today might have a thing or two to learn, because in the studio with me is someone that will do justice to this particular conversation. Professor Andrew Adesola Obafemi, Professor of Geography and Environmental Management at the University of Port Harcourt. BSc in Geography. I'm going to reel out like a lot of this. He's laughing in the studio. BSc in Geography, MSc and PhD Geography and Environmental Management. Another MSc degree specializing in cartography. He's also done a few research interests on centers of geoinformation, geospatial techniques application, urban studies and planning, environmental management and pollution monitoring. The list goes on and on. Prof, good morning to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you, listener out there.
All right. We're also supposed to have on the show today a member of the flood committee for Abua Odua local government area. He's also the press secretary for that local government area, Pelini Bombs. But we're still trying to establish contact with him. As soon as we do, we'll get to hear from him. Perhaps he will give us an idea of what these various committees that have been set up, and what particularly in Abua, which is one of those local governments heavily affected when the flood comes, what measures they have in place and what the plans are. But first, let's start with Prof here in the studio with us. Generally, Prof, I'd like you to just give us an idea. The government has said, well, plans are on ground. Okay. NEMA has said, NIMET has given the predictions. NEMA says we are available, plans are on ground. From a professional perspective, and when you look at what we have been able to do, can you say that, well, as a government, agencies, are we anywhere close to ready for the disaster that this flood might bring?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. The very direct answer is that we are not, and that we seems not to be aware that we are not. Because we speak so much, we talk so much, but when it comes to effective response, we are not yet there. The policies are there, the things that we need to put in place, we know. But you just find out that activating those things and making them work to ensure that there's reduction in the risk that people are exposed to each year, especially from flood, seems not to be doing so much about it. And so we're not getting the desired results that we ought to get.
We know that there are supposed to be preventive measures.
Yeah.
That is before it comes.
Yes.
And then now when the flood comes, we are supposed to have containment measures.
Yeah.
And then even after the flooding, we are supposed to have some other measures in place. What would you say are those things that we should have or should be looking at now in preparation for what's to come? We saw the rains that came just a few days ago and what it did to many parts of Port Harcourt, and that is something that has been happening for quite a while. And many thought we would have seen a solution and tried to figure this out, but clearly it looks like anytime it rains we just have to live with it. What are those things that we should be doing now, or government should be doing, that are not being done or not being done properly?
Okay, thank you. I spoke recently somewhere, and I was trying to advance the disaster management cycle approach to attacking the issues of floods in this country, especially within us, around us in the Niger Delta. And what I mean by disaster management cycle approach, there is the mitigation, there is the preparedness, there is the response and recovery. Now, sometimes when all of these things are not taken holistically, we seem not to actually have desired results that we ought to have. And how do I mean? Now, we know what should be activated. The people, the authority in charge, the government facilitators in charge ought to know what they need to activate. Of course, they also engage experts to discuss on these things. So we keep having meetings. Okay, this is what we need to do. These are the things we should put in place. And when those things are not put in place, especially from the perspective of preparedness, by the time we want to activate response, it becomes trial and error. And so that's why I want to still advocate that there should be a holistic way of putting together a disaster management cycle approach where mitigation is foreseen and then preparedness is put in place, and then if there is no solid preparedness, response will be haphazard. But where response, which is supposed to take enough suit of preparedness, is not effective enough, of course recovery is a non-deal. So having said that, we have institutions that are supposed to be taking responsibilities for some of these things. We need to call them to question. This was suggested the other time. What have you done? How far have you done? What are the issues? What are the limitations? And so that people will know that, these are the challenges they're having, and that's why they're not able to actually do so much. For instance, these predictions that you talk about, it's been there. And incidentally, the risk assessment model that was used has actually classified where we are going to have a high risk, where we are going to have a high, moderate, low flood risks. And incidentally, Rivers State is there. In fact, Port Harcourt is even specifically mentioned when it comes to high risk locations and cities that will be affected by flood this year. And the question is, rain has just started. Port Harcourt is already flooded. So what are the issues, and what do we need to be doing?
All right, let's get in touch with second guest on the show.
All right.
Speaking with us via telephone. Perhaps he will give us an insight from a government's perspective, at least at the local level. Abua Odua local government area is one of those that is to be affected, and usually is affected when the flood comes. I'll be speaking with the press secretary and member of the flood committee in that local government, Dugo Bellini Obom. Bellini, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mr. Lee.
All right, fantastic. I'm sure you've listened. We also have a professor with us here in the studio. Quickly, Mr. Bellini, we saw a different approach this time from local governments. We've heard jingles on radio, local government councils asking residents to, begin to relocate from affected areas. And then we also have heard the setting up of committees. But what we haven't heard is what exactly will these committees be doing, and what are they doing? So let's take Abua Odua as a study and share with us what plans are on ground. What is the flood committee in Abua Odua doing at the moment in preparation for the flood before it lands?
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Lee. Good morning, our listeners. Good morning, our professor in the studio.
Thank you.
Well, it's quite a tasky tasky situation we find ourselves. The flood is a natural disaster, of which normally all hands have to be on deck to surmount this surge. It is quite unfortunate because we don't even know how it affects the main people. Most of us will have much time to talk on radio, pages of newspaper, but the efficacy of this law is quite unfortunate and it's most unfortunate. But then, here in the border, we have quite a lot of plans we have put in place as instructed by the government that let's get this, let's prepare ahead of time. And the local government chairman, who is my boss, has set up a committee that we will have to find a way to manage the situation because it's a natural phenomenon.
So what is that way that the committee has put up? That's what we want to know. The committee has been set up for quite a number of months now. What exactly what's the blueprint to say, okay, before the flood comes, this is what and what we are going to do. When the flood comes, this is what we will be doing. After the flood leaves, this is what and what we think we should do. What are those laid down plans? In 1 minute, we have a short commercial coming shortly.
Okay, usually we have been embarking as flood committee members, management committee members. We have been embarking on sensitization for quite a number of time now. We have went to the villages there, sensitize them, talk to them about how to keep themselves safe because it's a natural phenomenon. Then we have also marked a place where they will stay. Those ones that are not having places where they could stay in the villages, because like in Aboda, the Adibon Aziz, which is which comprises of Ogboloma, Adada, and Nelego, and Sokoloma, they are usually the worst affected. So they don't usually have an upland where they could have a succor where they can stay. But we as a local government and as the flood management committee, we have already positioned a place where where we house them the last time. You understand, where they can just stay if they don't have a place to stay.
All right, Mr. Bums, just stay on the line for us. Let's take this very short break. We come back and continue, and we'll also get Prof's response to some of the things, perhaps even more suggestions as to what can be put on ground to prepare for the impending flood. In the meantime, join the conversation on Facebook. We're streaming live, Nigeria Info 92.3 PH. On X, it is Nigeria Info PH. You can also use the WhatsApp number. Do you think we are prepared?
You are tuned in to
Nigeria Info. We'll be right back after.
talking about, we have to, we need to, we must begin to sing this song, so that at least, even if we do not get it 100% right, we're able to get close to half. Even if we get 30% right this time, I think it will be commendable compared to what we have been getting in the past with regards to how we prepare, manage and recover from the floodings when they come. My guest in the studio is Professor at Department of Geography and Environmental Management, University of Port Harcourt, Andrew Obafemi, and I also have with us via telephone the Press Secretary for Abua Odwa local government area. He is also a member of the flood committee in that local government, no other than Tugo Pelini Obom. Let's just get back to Mr. Pelini, who is on the phone, to continue where he was. Mr. Pelini, thank you for staying with us.
Thank you.
All right, so you were trying to give insight as to step by step the plans that you have on ground as a committee ahead of the flood. So if you can continue with your line of thought, please.
Okay, brother. Thank you. Thank you for the privilege. What I was trying to say is that this is a step-by-step approach. It starts with the setting of the committee, which we have done that. And what we have to be looking at, as predicted by NIMET, when the flood eventually comes, we will have to see how we can evacuate the people as we did the last time. The local government used to put lots and lots of resources to surmount this surge. And we are not relenting on our efforts, because we are the local management committee managing the situation. Our mandate is to manage the situation. It is quite difficult for us as a people, because the effect is so much on the people, because at that period they used to lose a lot of things, their farmlands, their homes. How will you now provide succor that can be commensurate to the level of loss they have in front? Is a challenge. Well, as a government, we are ready and prepared to surmount this situation. The committee has been set. We have went around the community to give them brief sensitization in preparedness to the expected flood.
Is there anything being done with arranging relief materials? Because for some of these areas that are picked up to be camps, we are aware that in some cases adequate provisions aren't being made for people who would live in those camps, and sometimes it's not like it's a makeshift. People are expecting that by now, because we know that the floods will come every single year. There should have been a permanent place, well chosen, properly calculated, and prepared for this particular purpose. Is that the case, or we're going to revert to the old way of picking a particular hole in the community, and then people will come there, and then it is when the floods are with no mosquito nets, we don't have the food can this say why the day? What exactly are these areas?
We have this solution for people to pay the government to have level check. From the level high and the field of department also have then the of food services we have a that work from experience what went last year and of you and people want to and so I'm going to
let's just respond to heads. What assessment? What would be added? And what needs to know? Do you think any something will look enough for what's coming of them that they can do the discipline is not adversely effective in a negative way as it was the last time?
Thank you. I think the radio tells everybody else. I believe that the government is taking, and I want to do this. They need to build whatever preparedness plan that is in place on where we're coming from. Flooding each year has its own dynamics. If you don't understand the dynamics of each of the flood scenario, we will not be able to actually respond effectively to them. Yes, people also must be told that this is a living challenges that is with us. And so the idea of traditional attachment to their own location or place must be taken, maybe brought down a little, so that when there is need for them to be relocate or be displaced, they are prepared psychologically to do that. Because some of the challenges that we're having with our people is that the trauma, the psychology of even displaced, of moving from where they have been, could be a serious challenge. And so the government trying to do all of these efforts, they must capture all of these things. So essentially, like you said, that there are places where they have marked out, maybe makeshift places they have marked. It's even possible that there are some local governments that may not even have upland that will be good enough because of the level. We don't know the magnitude of water that we're expecting. So there should be a kind of a collaborative effort across local governments, by local governments and by state, so that there are places that have been identified as highlands that will be sufficient enough to be able to take a people. Why were people moved from Maiduguri all the way from Maiduguri to Abuja? So if it is possible because of Boko Haram issues to do that, it should also be possible to move some persons away from, let's say, Abuja to replace another local government entirely. That you're sure it's completely upland and you will not have any problems. So this requires a lot of resources too. But the challenges we've also been having is the faithfulness of these people who are managing the funds released for all of these has been an issue, because over the years, people are not able to really believe the account system as to the money released. Was it really used for what it was used for? While the commercials were on, I was asking you whether or not the problem would be political will or not having the right people, and you said those two are major. That will bring me to the minister portfolios that we had recently, and we now have a new Minister of State. I was trying to do just a brief look at the Ishak Salako is the person who is the Minister for Environment, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Minister of State Environment and Ecological Management, and we know that as Minister of State, he is interestingly from Ogun State, but he is a medical practitioner and a politician, and he served as a commissioner for health in Ogun State. So it brings us to think how what business that field would have with becoming Minister of State for Environment and Minister of State for Environment and Ecological Management. Putting the right square peg in a square hole, how does that play a role in all of this? Well, thank you, Andrew. What we are doing in Nigeria is we're playing politics of leadership, because when it comes to having taking responsibility, people take responsibility on political issues, but when it comes to taking responsibility on specialized expertise that will help the generality of Nigerians, they are not there. How do you have a medical doctor in the Ministry of Environment? So what experience? Where is a political leader, and so he can direct other people under him to do the needful. That's why sometimes when they're talking about sharing offices, you find that a lot of issues go on underground, and at the end of the day, let me not go so far into that. Let me get back to the flooding issues we're discussing. Because I also believe that even at the level of local government, do they have a consultant that is assisting them, an expert consultant that is assisting them, suggesting to them this is what to do? That the committee could be working to tell them how to go and what to do. Yes, because when you have that, and it's combined with political, with a desire to actually implement what scientific and suggested solutions are in place. The former president Olusegun Obasanjo, I can't put directly, but paraphrasing on the lines of our leaders are not do not know enough or are not seeking enough knowledge. Do you think that plays a role? Because ordinarily would expect that any of our leaders occupying positions these are basic things that they would understand. If they want to do this, we need to get people who know well to advise us, even if I do not know it. From what you're saying now, does this further portray the point made by the former president when he also said, well, I think some of our leaders in the country do not really know enough, and perhaps some are not even willing to change with the times and learn? Yes, it plays actually the background of a leader or an appointee plays okay, look at the Minister of Health. I mean, there's no contest about Minister of Health.
Yes,
because now I also know that the engineers have been talking about this issue of putting the right persons to handle some of the things that will require engineering activity and all those things. But like I said, it's politics we play with leadership, and so that's why when we have the right people in the right place, they'll be able to know what can be activated at what time to be able to bridge some of these unforeseen, menacing challenges that flood has brought to us. You know, flood is not peculiar to Nigeria, but in times they've been able to sit over it because of appropriate policy driven by the right people with backing of the leadership, and has sufficient funding to ensure that, look, these things must succeed and there must be continuity. So,
you mentioned the Minister for Health. Quickly, you should just let us know. Mohammed Ali Pat. He is a Nigerian physician and politician. In fact, he was executive officer of National Primary Healthcare Development Board, Department of Global Health and Population at University, professor of the practice of public health. So you see, he fits.
Yeah.
What is it? I think over the time we'll have a proper conversation and look at other ministers and whether or not they should. But for the Minister of State, I just told you for environment, Ishak Kunle Salako from Ogun State. He's a medical practitioner and politician, served as Commissioner for Health in Ogun State. We'll come to you, Bombs, in a matter of a moment. But first, let's open the phone lines. Let's hear from the listener. We're asking you, from your perspective as a listener, as a Rivers person, what are your worries? What are your concerns? Are we there yet? On Facebook, Nigeria Info 92.3 PH. On Twitter, Nigeria Info PH. I beg your pardon. On X, Nigeria Info PH. Don't forget the numbers to call are 0817 923 0003, 0817 923 0007. And Unjoku Clinton Sopruchi on Facebook says, our problem is our attitude to urban planning. Since the last major flooding in 2012, by now the local government areas, in conjunction with the state and others, would have developed an action plan for the red zones, identified areas that should be vacated completely, areas that need an improved drainage system and canals, etc. Quickly, before we go to the call, Prof, this particular point, I mean, you are in the urban planning area as well. How much role this plays in the flood situations that we have, especially for flash floods?
Okay.
How much needs to be done, and what are we not doing?
Yes, we're not monitoring our urban plan sufficiently, and there needs to be a commitment and an intentional commitment to ensure that those who are violating urban plans must be penalized. But we do not have the will. That's just it. I remember about 20-something years ago, there was a building somewhere in Port Harcourt. I don't want to mention specific thing. There was a building being built by a senator, but it was stopped by the House of Assembly. In another street there in Port Harcourt, there was a filling stations being built around D-line. The State House of Assembly stopped it. Until we are talking now, that didn't see the light of day.
Because it was on the water way,
those who are not properly located,
planned,
and it's an abuse on the urban plan. We have 1975 Port Harcourt urban plan, and the new Port Harcourt Greater Port Harcourt
plan.
Yes, it's not seeing the light of day, and because the way it was put together and has not been enough buying into it, because it was a foreign conceived issue. So we need to have efficient urban planning monitoring to be able to help us in dealing with urban floods in Port Harcourt. All
right, let's get onto the phone line. Joe Best is in Oyigbo. Your question or contribution quickly. How far are we from getting this right? Are we prepared? Are you concerned about what we might experience in this season of flooding once it hits? Joe Best, good morning.
My brother, this the country Nigeria we find ourselves is the best country. The citizens are so normal. They don't care. They don't bother. Those who are in this shape, they're almost in the war zone. Honestly, a man who have a war move from his house, never find things easy than somebody who are not his house any longer. The problem we have is the politicians. They have not want to do the real work. They are vote for. You know, these people are paying every month. They are heavily paid every month. Sometimes we sit down and ask ourselves, what are they doing? I wish want to discuss the erosion issue at this hour. Why 4 years ago? It had started far back 8 years ago. Nothing is done. We don't have leaders. That's the problem we have. The company sit down and start to watch them like film. They enter and start to root money. That's what they are for. They don't care about to do the work they were paid for. That's where we have problem.
Right,
if you don't checkmate them from this governor, you enter minister. From local government, you enter state this assembly. There's no time to checkmate them to know what they use the money for. Even if you put that person there, you still go the same way because the system still remains the same.
All right, thank you very much. Muriel is in Okrika. Okrika woman, good morning to you.
Thank you, Efemi. Good morning.
Yes, go on.
Thank you, Efemi. Look, one of your guests said that he's so sorry, he's worried that this flood issue has really made these people have really lost so many things through this flood. But Efemi, they've not just lost their properties, they've lost their mind, and eventually some of them lost their lives. But Efemi, I'm very curious because when the last time we heard about NEMA, they said they were trying to locate the victims to share these their relief materials. I don't know. We've not heard anything about them. If they've been able to locate these victims and what kind of relief materials were shared to them. If there's a way you can get one or two of these victims and that receive victims, to tell us what and what they received, how NEMA helped. And I want to plead, why are we not hearing so much from the House of Assembly members? Those people that come from this area, why are we not hearing them shouting these things? We have them there, we have the local government here. What are they doing? They should tell us what and what they are doing to prevent this. They've not even taken care of the effect of the last flood. We are not hearing any concrete effect, any concrete thing they did for these victims. And now they're expecting more. What is this? We should hear more from these people, the people that are representing them. Why are they so quiet? They should tell us why they are quiet. Is there anything that is suppressing them that they are quiet, they cannot speak for their people? But absolutely, I want to hear what happened with NEMA.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to get to Pelini as well because although all of those places affected, perhaps he would give us an information whether or not NEMA has reached out to them. We'll try to still get in touch with the NEMA chair here in the south and know how far they've gone with that particular exercise. But I'm sure we would hear from Pelini as well whether or not those plans that NEMA had on ground and whatever they brought and they were supposed to reach some victims if they've seen any of those. Okay. In the meantime, Ida is in Nkoro. Ida, good morning.
Yeah, Andre, good morning.
Yeah, welcome.
First of all, I want to comment my local government chairman, Dr. Nyada. He has prepared for these things long time ago. I would to wait for this time to come before we prepared. Now, just like your roof is leaking, you will not see it. In terms of anything, when rain falls, you went and bail out the water. You is getting lost. Every day you're bailing water. Your things are getting spoiled. So federal government and the state government should please find solution for this matter. So that this matter will end once and for all. For my local government chairman, he has prepared everything that's taking place. We should clean our drainages. And most of us will wait for government. If you come to church here now, the employer will be inside water. And when rain falls, you see flood. I have the videos. I will send it for you. The local government will be same thing. Let them clean out their drainages. That wait for government to come and do it for them. Most time you see them, they will just relax themselves. Water will enter into their store. So a customer will pass by, will not buy anything. If you clean that place, water pass, customer will be able to enter your shop to buy something. You get them from there. You don't wait for government. Thank you very much. God bless you.
All right, Zion in GRA. Good morning, Zion.
I think to a large extent the communities are their own problem and not the government. We are too quick to call on the government when we have failed our own part of the bargain. You see me? I challenge you now, go to Awoda, any community that is complaining their community is affected, go to that community now and ask the community leadership, either the CDC chair or the paramount ruler, please give me the names and the documents documents of the houses that will be affected or already have affected the last year flood, he has nothing to present to you. He will have, I challenge you to do that today.
No, I think quickly, let me respond to you, Zion, because I know that in the last flood I was in parts of Auda and I spoke with the traditional. They were one of the few community local governments that had a detailed names of even those that lost properties, those who died. They had those who were sick, the kind of diseases that they had, the kind of treatment that was given. They had those informations at the time. And now that you brought that up, clearly we're going to also get in touch with them again and know. He said those information were sent to the appropriate quarters, hoping that they would get the response, but they didn't get any response till. I don't know if they have got something now.
I stand to challenge that, if you mean.
All right, Mr. Zion, we don't have a lot of time. Thank you. Quickly, let's get to Pelini, so we'll come back to Prof as we attempt to wrap up. Pelini, thank you for holding on. I'm sure you heard some of the callers, Muriel to be precise, and it was a question I was supposed to ask you as well. As NEMA, from the last flood and those people that were affected, we know that there were plans to reach those victims. Has anything been done, or has there been any communication between the local government council, the flood committee, and NEMA with regards to that?
Thank you for holding me down. Truth is that there has been a series of communication between NEMA and the local government, because our responsibility as flood management, our responsibility is management, not prevention. There are two things there. Most people are mixing them up. Our responsibility is to manage the situation. So we have been having series of interaction with NEMA. Even the prior time, NEMA visited the local government and Daniel in the office at the time there. We discussed, we strategized and planned together, and we noticed that we have to be improving from the previous arrangement. We have to find a way to mitigate.
So were any of the victims compensated, those who lost their houses and all of that? What did the committee or local government do for those people in the past, and what are you planning to do for the people that would be affected and would lose their properties this time?
Without wasting much of your time, there are compensations. But then the compensation that government provides, so the cannot be quantified to the level of damage, because the lady actually explicated that the damage goes beyond materialistic compensation, psychology, their life. What kind of compensation will you give to someone who has lost their loved one in course of this flood result or disaster? So for government on our own side, we are trying our best, and series of communication now we have established with NEMA to see how we can improve the previous arrangement.
All right, Pelini.
Our arrangements are going on.
Thank you very much, Pelini. Thank you. We'll keep in touch to get more details as they unfold. Thank you once again for making our time to join us. We have a commercial coming. We're wrapping things up shortly. We'll get to Prof as we conclude and get your response. You heard some of the callers and their concerns and what they raised. And you've also heard some of the plans that these people, the flood committee people, are putting on ground. But ultimately, is the recovery part of it is very essential when it happens, and how prepared are we for that is something that you respond to as soon as we come back from this very short commercial before we wrap things up. Don't forget to take your messages to WhatsApp 0809 030 6416. Stay on the line for us.
You don't.
So, Prof, your response, you heard the callers. Recovery is an integral part in all of this. What solutions would you say we need to put down if we are to get this right?
Okay, thank you very much. Last global platform at Bali, the United Nations Disaster Reduction, they started looking at the issue of recovery when you say building back better. That we should not even be talking about building forward better. So now recovery is so important, and if we do not have, like I said earlier, this is a building block. You are thinking of mitigating the challenges of a flood, so there must be preparedness. And if you have prepared infrastructure and in place, then response will be very smooth. It won't be by trial. If response is in place and is very smooth, recovery is already initiated through response. And when the recovery is already in place, you are able to build on effort that is achieved during response, and people are able to buy into what you are doing. At this level now, we should be able to domesticate, customize. What are the recovery things? What are the recovery culture or ethics and infrastructure that we need, especially in our state, that will make people to say, oh, this government is doing something or has done something, or this committee, like our colleague made reference to, has done something. So recovery, if it will actually achieve the purpose of which it is supposed to achieve, should be done in such a way that people will be able to say yes, they felt the impact of recovery. And like I had earlier mentioned, each flood each year, we must know the level to be able to we must know certain factors that determine the level of impact, the timing of the flood, the location, the place, the damages, the embankment. If we don't take all of this action, we are just saying that what we suffered the previous year, we are also preparing to suffer more
that again. All right, Prof, thank you very much, but we have to draw the curtain here. Already pressed for time. Thank you once again. Hopefully we have you again in the studio.
Thank you very much.
All right, Professor Andrew Obafemi, lecturer, University of Port Harcourt. Time for the news at 9.
Thank you.
And now we'll bring you news from